Now, I must confess, I wasn't always a hybrid enthusiast. In fact, back in 2006, when these newfangled contraptions first started appearing on our roads, I was a bit of a skeptic. The idea of a petrol engine working in tandem with an electric motor seemed like a recipe for complexity and potential reliability issues. All that, coupled with the rather hefty price tag at the time, made me wonder if it wouldn't be better to stick with the simplicity of a good old-fashioned internal combustion engine. However, after much deliberation and a touch of what my wife might call nagging, I decided to take the plunge and see what all the fuss was about. Little did I know that this tentative step into the world of hybrid vehicles would mark the beginning of a 17-year journey filled with surprises, both delightful and, shall we say, character building. It's rather like the first time you try a new gadget, isn't it? You're presented with this sleek, modern machine, all buttons and screens, and you haven't the foggiest idea where to begin. That was me back in '06, behind the wheel of my newly acquired hybrid. The transition from a purely petrol-powered car wasn't exactly seamless. For starters, there was the eerie silence when the electric motor kicked in. I found myself instinctively checking the engine, convinced I'd stalled at a rather inconvenient moment. And then there was the regenerative braking system, which took some getting used to. Instead of the familiar, reassuring dive of the nose as you braked, the hybrid seemed to glide to a halt, almost as if it were reluctant to relinquish its hard-earned momentum. It was all a bit unsettling, to be honest. But like all things in life, with time and patience, one adapts. The initial disorientation gave way to a grudging acceptance, then to familiarity, and finally, dare I say it, a certain level of comfort. Now let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? Hybrids, at least in those early days, were not what you'd call light on the wallet. Oh, they sipped fuel with admirable restraint, but when it came to maintenance, well, that was a different story altogether. See, back then, mechanics were still getting to grips with these newfangled hybrid systems. Spare parts were like rare exotic birds, difficult to find, and even more difficult to afford. A routine service often felt like an elaborate heist, with me handing over a small fortune while the mechanic, with a knowing smile, assured me it was all perfectly normal. Thankfully, as the years rolled by and hybrids gained popularity, the cost of maintenance became somewhat less eye-watering. Mechanics, no longer baffled by the sight of an electric motor, became more adept at diagnosing and repairing these vehicles. As with all things mechanical, time takes its toll. Over the years, I noticed a gradual but undeniable decline in my hybrid's fuel efficiency. The once impressive mileage figures began to dwindle, and my trips to the petrol station became slightly more frequent. Now, I'm not one to panic at the first sign of a problem. After all, a car, much like a loyal canine companion, deserves a bit of leeway as it matures. However, when the fuel gauge decided to develop a rather irritating penchant for unpredictability, I knew it was time for action. One minute it would cheerfully display a reassuringly full tank, the next it would plummet towards empty, faster than a politician's promise during an election campaign. This, I must confess, was a tad disconcerting. Now, despite the occasional hiccup, the quirks of hybrid ownership have, for the most part, been outweighed by the undeniable convenience they offer. One of the most liberating aspects I've found is the sheer infrequency of visits to the petrol station. In this day and age, where our lives seem to be ruled by the tyranny of time, anything that frees up even a small portion of our schedule is a godsend. And let's not forget the financial savings. While the initial cost of a hybrid might be a touch higher than its petrol-powered counterparts, the reduced fuel consumption over the years has undoubtedly softened the blow to my bank account. So after 17 years of hybrid ownership, would I recommend it? Well, like most things in life, it's not a simple yes or no answer. There are, as I've highlighted, pros and cons to consider. On the one hand, you have the undeniable benefits of reduced fuel consumption, the quiet satisfaction of knowing you're doing your bit for the environment, and the smug feeling of driving past petrol stations while others queue up to refuel. On the other hand, there's the initial cost, the potential for higher maintenance expenses, and the gradual decline in fuel efficiency over time. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to embrace the world of hybrid vehicles rests with you. Do your research, weigh the pros and cons, and perhaps, most importantly, take a test drive or two. Remember, a car is a significant investment, both financially and emotionally, so it's crucial to choose one that aligns with your needs, your budget, and perhaps even your sense of adventure. And who knows, you might just find yourself pleasantly surprised by the experience.